congratulations on the movie. The best compliment I can give you is that I woke up thinking about it, and that
Awesome.
doesn't happen too often. So I'll just say that.
Thanks, brother.
So I have a ton of questions because I have so much time with you. Let's jump in. What movie do you think you've seen the most?
Either Raiders of the Lost Ark or Jaws or Silence of the Lambs. They're all fighting. We just watched Silence of the Lambs again, so it's still ticking up.
Right. When you watch movies like that, do you ever, as a director, because I've spoken to some directors and they've talked to me, or they mentioned that they've taken notes or they've written down shots or whatever. Have you ever watched any of these films and like written down something specific that you want to incorporate into something you want to do?
I don't want to say I always take notes, but I often take notes watching movies. I just have a pad next to me. Always try to kind of learn something, but I'm very much lost in the story. But if something cinematically hits me, I'll scribble it down on the piece of paper next to me. If I'm at a certain point in the making of a movie, especially the writing, the latter stages of writing, like the last third of the writing process, I'm very careful about what I watch because that's super, super influencing me.
I completely get it. Do you have a favorite sci-fi or fantasy film?
I mean, so many. When you said that, I went to Alien right away, just as soon as you said that.
Sure. Let's do that one. If you weren't writing and directing, what do you think you would have done?
Now I would say I would love to have opened a bookstore and have a small bookstore, but that's more of like a fantasy retirement job than I guess my alternate career. I guess I would have been a doctor, right? I mean, that's what my parents are, all my uncles and aunts are. I think I would have probably, been odd bedside demeanor. I'm probably telling stories to the patients, but
Sure. Is there anything that you collect?
Fantastic question. I do collect posters, so I have, but I'm running out of wall space because I don't like to have them kind of like hidden anywhere. So
Sure.
I have all of first edition Hitchcock posters in my house.
Do you have the huge ones?
No, the kind of the one sheets.
Sure.
So you come in and they're all the one sheets from the original, including Rebecca, which is a very rare first edition to have of that movie, which I love that movie.
Have you posted any pictures of the posters?
I should actually. It did cross my mind. I should do that wall of those.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I want to see them. So I'm selfish.
Yeah, for sure.
What TV series have you watched all the way through more than once?
I'm wondering if that actually exists. That I did do that. I've been toying with going back to watch Sopranos from beginning to end.
Sure.
So that's probably I've been toying with that. And I mean, you're not counting like Friends in The Office, right? You're not counting. You're not counting that. That doesn't count. That's perpetually on in everyone's house all the time. That doesn't.
Well, here's the thing though, like that does count because you can say, Friends is always on or The Office is always on. So that does count.
Yeah, I think, the trilogy of Seinfeld, The Office, and Friends, I think is more. The Friends is more my daughters and my wife that they have it on all the time. Rachel's doing something in our house at all times. So
I understand. What do you wish you knew earlier in your career that you've learned as you've made all your projects?
Wow, what a great question. That the thing that at times makes it dissonant in its immediate consumption at that moment, that thing is not necessarily a bad thing, and oftentimes is the wonderful thing about it that makes it resonate and makes its brothers and sisters, the other films, even more seen in a stronger light. So, for example, that Signs was my biggest opening movie is because of Unbreakable. That kind of relationship of the dissonant movie to the next movie, that is something that I've learned over time is, it's a very strange thing to do art and commerce together like that. And I've been so lucky to have this long relationship with the audience, and the ones that has created this bond are the dissonant ones that has that just that weird thing about them. And so I would have told my younger self, because I tack towards that. Like my instinct is that to do that kind of dissonant thing and to follow that, to just don't worry about, being the popular kid on the day.
People used to go to see a Hitchcock movie because it was a Hitchcock movie. And now people go to see a movie because of your name. When did it hit you that like, oh my God, my name is actually getting people into a theater?
I don't think I've quite internalized that entirely yet. I mean, it's weird to pass a billboard or something. We went to a wedding. The first thing we did is after the pandemic, the first kind of thing, we went to a friend's wedding, and it was in Baltimore, and drove up and got out of the car, come into the hotel, and all the bellboys had the masks on, and they were like, old, and they were all yelling it out. And I'm like, wow, this is wild that they're coming, they're interested in the author. And then went into the Starbucks, and the guy at the Starbucks was like, July 23rd, man, July 23rd. I was like, wow, this is, it's amazing. I take it very seriously, the relationship of the craft of it, that relationship. It's one that, we have with authors of novels. It's one we have with authors of plays. And it's rare, more rare in the movie industry. Just a blessing, dude. What can I say? I mean, my movie's opening up in movie theaters in a few weeks here. And, first one that went all over the world was 1999. So it's like, man, it's amazing.
What you don't know about the story you just told me is that the employees at the hotel and at the Starbucks were all given $5 each by your wife to say these things.
Is that right?
Yes. So I just want to keep.
No, by the way, we work the other way. My wife would be like, "Here's $5 not to say, just don't tell him it. Don't remind me this place. Here's $5. Just don't say it."
Right. You've worked with all different budgets, and I'm curious if you find working with a lower budget is almost is easier, not because it's less money, but because it's almost less responsibility to the people paying for the movie. And if it doesn't work, it's not the end of the world. Like, can you sort of talk about what it's like working in these different budget levels?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's been the secret sauce to do these 4 movies and make them, at a very low number, the lowest I can make it for. I in that relationship with my partners, I can deliver the most unique and provocative product, which I think is our weapon, to be different. The more different it is, the better it is for us in the marketplace. That's my thesis. But I'm being responsible, it's a very interesting thing. We're trying to do something anomalous, like say we're releasing Old in the summer. And honestly, every movie that's out is at least 10 times the cost of the movie of Old, right? And I does give me comfort when it allows me to do very provocative things, darker things. I don't have to, feel like I have to play it safe. I can be very dissonant, like we were saying, and know that for the most part we're going to be okay, and we're building a relationship that the studio and I love with the audience. I think it's a very special thing, dude, that's going on. I don't mind, doing it this way. In fact, I love it, and in fact, other filmmakers, I would say you should make your movies for the lowest number that you can have freedom. That should be your goal. There's an equation for that. And the moment you take the extra dollar, you have now committed to something other than I'm going to listen to these strange voices that are telling me slow it down or kill this person or have this, shock them in this way.
This question I asked to a lot of filmmakers, but I think you're in a different position because I think a lot of people want to be in business with you. And if you came up with an idea, but there must have been something, or maybe if you could get the financing for any dream project, what would you make and why? And I'm not sure if this question applies to you, but let's see.
Yeah, I don't know if it applies to me, dude, because that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm trying to think, is there a movie to finance that?
Yeah, like I said, this might be a question that doesn't apply to you because as I said, I would imagine everyone wants to be in the night business. So it's like,
Well, you bring up an interesting thing. Like, say there was a big franchise movie, right? That I was like, wow, I'm really interested in this because it has a great opportunity, but I want to do the small version of that. And that has happened. I won't say what movies. That has happened. That has crossed my mind. Wow, I would be interested to do the $18 million version of that if everyone was willing to do that. It crosses my mind, but then it becomes, it's so that particular IP is so important to that studio or that company that risking it in that way makes no sense. Why would you try to invent it in that way? There's actually been, I think, 3 of those situations where I was like, hey, I'll do the really kind of like down and dirty version of that. So it's kind of the reverse a little bit. It's almost like, will they allow me not to take the money and not to spend the money? It's do it in this way. But then the ramifications of that are limitations that I believe in that are positive. Let me ponder more. Maybe I can think about it. But yeah, it's weird because that is what I'm doing, right? I'm financing these movies that wouldn't be able to be financed in the studio system traditionally.
Do you have a lot of scripts in the desk that have never been made?
No, I wrote one in college that I almost made at the time, and then I made the other movie for Miramax at that time. But there's only one since then that I've written. That
Are you talking Labor of Love?
Yeah, labor's there. There's actually 2. There's one more that I have another idea for that I may make one day. So that one's so there's 2.
Whatever happened with Labor of Love? I think you were going to do that with Bruce Willis.
Yeah.
What happened with that one?
So it's emerged so many times in my career. A couple times with Denzel, and it's just a drama. It's just there's nothing. It's not a thriller. It's just a drama. It's something that I wrote. It's a romance essentially, and I wrote it. It was the first thing that I wrote that actually brought me into the industry in a real way. It was so long ago. So it means a lot to me. It's very emotional. At this point, it's almost a period piece because it was set in 1993, 94, so it's like 94. It's like it won't make any sense now with cell phones and everything that we have, smartphones. And so you would either literally have to do it as a period piece now from that time period. It's very meaningful to me. It almost feels like a novel or something that I wrote, but that's trying to know when to do it and how to do it has always been on my mind. It's a very meaningful piece to me.
Which of your films went through the biggest change from your first draft on the page to what people see on screen or saw on screen?
Great question, man. Let's see. My initial reaction is Sixth Sense because that was the one that started out as just a straight crime kind of, there was no therapist. It was a serial killer movie when I first wrote it. It was a crime scene photographer was the main character, and his child sees the victims of the serial killer. So that was the original idea that I had in my head.
Which of your films do you think had the most deleted scenes?
Wow, great question. That one I would be guessing at because that's a tricky one. You have to see. I have all these cards for each scene when you're editing, and then as they go into the graveyard, as they come out, they go into this pile that I call the graveyard. That list goes. I'm thinking it's Split. That had whole storylines that came out, a character that came out. The first cut of that was like 3 hours, so it was big.
Right, and I apologize for not knowing, but do all of your deleted scenes end up on like a Blu-ray or a DVD, or there's still a lot of things sort of in a basement somewhere?
Not all of them end up. I'm careful not to make the analysis on the Blu-ray so forensic that it's hard to watch the movie, you know. So there's a little calibration that goes on in terms of, let's say, for example, there was a character that was cut out. That may or may not be okay for you to watch the movie after you knew that. So I try to, I want to keep the purity of the movie as much as possible. I don't mind scenes that give you more depth into the characters. So I tend to put those kind of scenes in the deleted scenes. Not every scene that was deleted.
Completely. I believe many years ago, you met with Spielberg about writing a fourth Indiana Jones movie.
Yeah.
Did you ever come up with your MacGuffin and the idea, or was it more just like a basic meeting?
Oh my God. It was, I mean, it was fantastic. Obviously Raiders is like, my favorite movie of all time. And so this was a dream, to be asked as a kid to go see a movie in a movie theater and then later to be asked by that person to write one of those in the future. I mean, that's his, you could faint. I could faint at that moment. It was amazing. I do have my notebooks. I still have those with all my ideas for that movie. I did have a take. I talked to everybody involved, and it was so nascent at that time, that movie. So everyone hadn't gotten into a room yet. They were kind of bouncing ideas off of me. So everyone had different ideas of what to do. But I definitely, when you say that, I have in my head, and it's a green notebook, and I had this idea. It was a darker idea.
Got it. Did you? Because every Indiana Jones movie has the MacGuffin. So, but had you thought about what that was yet?
I did. Yeah, I had an idea. Look, I didn't pitched it to them or anything like that, but I had kind of an idea.
Okay, I won't press you any further. I know that you also expressed interest many years ago in Harry Potter. Do you view that as something that sort of got away, or were you sort of like, these movies are really good, it's cool?
Oh, definitely. Our kids watch them, and we all watch them and love them. They have a kind of almost a nostalgia about them now, an innocence about them that represented a certain time in filmmaking, I think, and I find them beautiful. I know a lot of my Rupert's now in my show, and so I've always felt close to them when I met them all as kids, and I was in my late 20s when I was meeting them, and now they're older than I am when I met them. And so it's very, just amazing. It would have been, those are more than a job that you have to change your life. You got to move to England, and you have change your whole life. And I guess it goes right to the core of, are you making original movies or are you not, kind of. So there was some really fundamental, when you're making movies of that scale and all of that stuff. And again, kind of talking about all of this, those were early days, but talking about what type of voice are you, and what is the best way to tell those stories where your voice can be your voice? Is it in large scale movies like that? Does your imagination work that way, or does it work in this kind of almost, indie way?
Sure. Roger Deakins and Steven Soderbergh are famous for very limited coverage on set. They generally have one camera set up. They're getting very limited, almost no coverage. Roger famously shot, I believe, Blade Runner and James Bond with one camera. And so I'm curious, when you're on set, how much coverage are you trying to do? How much are you just doing the minimal coverage?
Yeah, there's no coverage per se. We shoot everything that I drew. There's no 99.99999% of the time, there isn't anything else that we're doing. It's just the things I drew, and that's what we're shooting exactly in that way. When Roger and I did The Village together, we kind of worked out the shots, and that's it. That's what's there. And so it's play-like, and I'm of that mind entirely, of the old school mentality of make the movie in your head and go get that movie.
Sure. How do you typically like to talk to your actors before they step on set the first day? Are you giving them certain things to watch, certain things to read? Like, what is that dynamic like?
It varies actor to actor, project to project, but there is we do rehearse a lot. It's like a theater. And it's like on old, it was very much like a theater group. And I would say to them, hey, think of the blocking and the movement of your relationship to the camera as dance moves and not as, hey, my character would do this or my character would do that. This is the choreography of the movement of the camera and how I was thinking of it in terms of your positioning in juxtaposition to others and in relationship to the camera. And when you take a step forward, we're moving this way. I see the other person, her cheek comes in, all that stuff. And think of it as choreography. And then I'm going to talk you through the emotional meaning of that choreography. And within that seeming structure, there's infinite ways to perform it. And so when it's very complicated choreography, I try to do it early so that they get comfortable with, hey, this is how I'm seeing it. And ones that are more fluid, like, hey, I have a locked off frame and you can move wherever you want, into the bathroom, out of the bathroom, come in, there's like a scene where they're in the movie where they're fighting. And I put a light on a bed and one in the bathroom. And I was like, go wherever you want. And these are the hit points, but you could be, like I said, you could be entirely in the bathroom and I never see you if you wanted to do that version, that take. So there's times where I'm like, your complete spontaneity is what I'm looking for.
Jumping into old, because I'm realizing I'm just about out of time. This is your first time shooting something out of Philadelphia. Will it be your last time filming something out of Philadelphia?
I don't think so. The next few movies that I have in my head are kind of, you could shoot them all in Philly. One of them takes place in a couple locations outside, but they're very contained. So a lot of them could be done the traditional way, but I'm getting more comfortable with writing exterior, and then it's not Philadelphia. Normally it's exterior Philadelphia or interior building Philadelphia. And probably because my kids have gotten older and I feel the freedom to do that.
One of the things that's interesting about this is that you have different actors playing the same characters. Some of them, I should say. Was there ever a sort of in your mind, like, do I want to make it that every 15 minutes there's going to be a different actor? Like, sort of talk about in your mind the progression, how you wanted to depict that on screen, and how much is it sort of like when you have like a movie star or a star that you need to like have in the movie, you sort of have to play a little bit more like, I need this character on screen for an hour because they're like a star and they're helping me sell the movie versus, does that make any sense?
Yeah. I didn't quite think of it, but yes. I didn't quite think of it like that, but there was a math equation here of making sure I wasn't looking at prosthetics the whole movie. That was critical to me. I didn't want that. I didn't want that feeling. I wanted it to be various ways of representing this movement of look and age. And I remember, and even now, the idea of insinuating people on the edge of frame or being behind them. And, I thought that was a wonderful way to be provocative with the audience, to kind of say, well, now the kids are older, but I'm not showing them to you. And I wonder what they look like. And you're just getting, wow, their hair looks the same, but they don't quite look the same. And that movement of, can I find actors that really look like each other, that are, 15 years apart? Can I do that they move and they actually can feel like each other? How can we use CGI or prosthetics in a very gentle, delicate way that create like, wow, I'm seeing them. There's from that scene to that scene, they're slightly older. You're catching it or you might not catch it, that kind of thing. So we analyzed that, and every actor got how old they were in every scene. They got a chart of like age for every scene that they were in.
I don't want to be specific because obviously I don't want to spoil anything, but this is one of those movies that could have ended in a few different places in my mind. And I don't want to, I think the ending's great, but I'm curious how you ended up where you did, because and again, it's hard without being specific, but there's a few places where I'm like, where, you know what I mean? I guess, was it always this ending, or did you ever have another version of it, or choose like a different thought of where this could end?
It was always this ending. For me, the graphic novel, which had no ending, essentially, and didn't explain anything, had a few frames in it where I thought they were insinuating something. And so I kept writing that version of the story in my head. I go, oh, that must mean that. if that image of that person over there, that must mean that there's something else going on. And so for me, it was very much from the graphic novel, like, you know, almost like a painting that was unfinished, that they are insinuating what the rest of the painting was. So that ending that you have was from that. It was from that. So it was always that version. And there were different rhythms of how to convey that ending. That there was various versions of conveying that ending, but it was always that ending.
Thank you so much for your time. Hopefully these
Thanks,
questions
buddy.
were not too painful.
No, super fun, dude, as always.